This, dudes. Yeah, I was listening to another chapter in that Grant Hancock book, and it was at the part about Giza. Shit is wild, man. Shit is so wild, dude. I, history is not what we think it is. You know, I'll say that much. I mean, that book is fucking fire. What's this dude over here? I don't know, I can't vouch for any of his other stuff, but I'm really impressed by that book. Um, and you know how it is with those kind of books, right? Like they have, he's trying to prove his point, right? So he's not going to emphasize this stuff that disagrees with his point, which that's what all fucking writers do, right? But like, it's just like this one section I just got to was about the graffiti, like it was just about like the way that like different discoveries, like discovery that like lined up with like even back in the 1800s, like when they would discover something that lined up with like the prevailing wisdom of the day, such as Khufu, Khafre, like who built what when, you know. Um, what about it is dishonest though? Like that's what I'm saying. Like you're just going through this part about like the way that they treated different types of evidence, right? Like stuff that lined up with the prevailing wisdom was immediately fucking put on a pedestal and preserved and fucking encased in amber, and it was like, this is the story, this is legit. And then when they would discover arguably more compelling pieces of evidence that disagreed with it, they just fucking would just ignore it, right? And it's the same shit they do now. It's like that has been going on for a long time, and I can see why. It's just it's human motivations. It doesn't mean there's a giant conspiracy, but like, I mean, I would do the same thing probably. But they had like the fucking the one of the key pieces of evidence for why, or for when it was built, right, is they found this like notes written on the blocks, right? Because they would, they'd quarry the blocks and then somehow get them to the pyramid hundreds of miles away. But like they had they would write little notes on them and shit. Supposedly, like the notes, this Weiss, I think the guy's name was, this German archaeologist in the 1800s, they had like, it was basically like, it was like the equivalent of like Black's Rule type graffiti. It was like Khufu was here, like Khafre was here, whatever kind of shit. And it's like convenient that like they only found anything like that in the 4 chambers that had been opened at that point. The 5th chamber that hadn't been opened yet had nothing of the sort, right? And it was just like goofy, like it was like grammar was off in it too, they thought. And then meanwhile they found some other shit that had it was from, I think, like a couple hundred years later after the pyramids were built, and it was like basically referring to a completely different narrative of when, who built them, and how, and not how, who, when. And it was just fucking like they had no like they referred to it as like ancient fanfic, or like ancient historical fiction somehow, like written on the walls in the pyramid, It's just the whole entire book is just example like that. I mean, they is like, academics, right? people who are the gatekeepers of their respective, field, right? Like, I'm not saying it's like, the fucking, the reptilians are telling them to silence the critics or whatever. I'm just saying it's like very natural human motivation to, like, want to confirm the story that you're telling, because it all dates back to Herodotus, right? Like, Herodotus went there in, whatever time period that was, like 600 BC or something, and they told him it was built during Khufu, whatever his name was, Khafre or Khufu, whatever. One of them is the father, one of them is the son. They told him it was built then, and then that's just been passed on ever since, right? There's nothing else to actually demonstrate that, except for the weird stuff like I just described, right? And like, it's just such a complete anomaly of all the other kind of like funeraries in the time period. This one is just stark, right? There's like no fucking treasures, there's no arts, there's no like fucking statues, there's no like like exquisite fucking like design work and stuff. It's all just like sterile, like very like utilitarian looking is how he described it, and that makes a lot of sense. And whatchamacallit, he was describing certain parts about like the chronology of like how each different chambers were opened up. Yeah, the water erosion on the Sphinx. Yeah, he hasn't gotten to that part yet, but like he just got to Giza. Like, he's been in South America. I'm like halfway through the book, and the first half is all South America. And then like there's the whatchamacallit. So he was describing like the chronology of how like different parts of the different pyramids were opened up, right? And basically like, if treasure hunters, because that's the story, right? Supposedly treasure hunters broke in there, thousands of years ago and took everything, like every scrap, right? Which again would be an anomaly, as far as Egypt treasures go. None of that shit has never been a pharaoh's tomb that had every single piece of everything stolen, right? There's been some that were raided, obviously, but like nothing where they got every scrap of everything, right? I mean, but like that's what every author does. That. He's a fucking like What up, Tom? What's going on? The chemical plant theory? No, I mean, I like that Christopher Dunn stuff, right? Like, there's that one room that has all these, like, was it like hydrogen isotopes or something? It has, like, a residue on the walls that looks like there was chemical reactions in there. I forget. I mean, we can look at that Y-Files episode again. But, like, the chronology of how I think it was the second pyramid, right? The middle one that was supposedly built by either Khufu or Khafre, or whatever one of those was the son. He was basically describing it, and so the story goes that the Tomb Raiders had gone in there, a couple hundred years after that dynasty had fallen, and had supposedly taken out everything. Like, again, never had happened before or since, right? But somehow the Tomb Raiders got everything. And then he was describing like the passages where they would have had to have dragged the stuff out, right? So like if that had been the case, they would have had to get in whatever statues, whatever gold, whatever treasure was in there, and dragged it like up and out this passageway with like he said it was a 3-foot diameter. Like I don't know, man. It seemed pretty implausible to me, right? Like it seemed like I just don't. I feel like the fucking, the Egyptologists, right? I feel like they haven't been fair, right? When you look at stuff like that, it's just, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? And like for that type of discrepancy to exist and for the intellectual curiosity to be basically non-existent, it's frustrating, right? It's like, yeah, those are the people who would have the expertise to really you know, hone in on some of those contradictions. And you know, it doesn't look like it's really been done, right? It's just been dismissed, and which again, it doesn't mean there's a conspiracy. I can see why, right? Individually. I don't know, man. If you look at them now, like you're doing the same shit now with like the way that they like have been so hesitant to let the like any of the like the lidar and shit in. You know, I don't know. I think that they argue, you know, they obviously have an incentive to want to preserve the, you know, the lore, like the existing mythology, right? I get it. It's not, I'm not like denigrating them, I'm just saying. I feel like more could be done to really explore some of this stuff. I just think that the chronology of fucking, you know, it's off, I think. And it doesn't, I'm not trying to like downplay Egypt or whatever. I mean, not to mention those size of those bricks, dude. They would have had to have placed, supposedly they took off 3 months every year, or either they took off 3 months every year or they only worked for 3 months every year, whatever it was. If they worked all year, they would have had to have placed like, what was it, a block every 3 minutes, right? And then if they hadn't, it would have had to have been like 4 blocks a minute or something insane, right? Like for 20 years. Yeah, they don't want to fucking waste paper printing new ones. The red pyramid is saturated with ammonia. Lack of physical evidence. Contemporary construction methods for pyramids, buildings, pots, etc. are shown on the walls. Which walls? Like, I mean, like, the stuff I just talked about, I didn't even say anything about, like, the, fucking construction methods, right? But, like, if you're Khufu, like, I should probably just look up which one that is. I mean, if you look at the way that, like, his name was emblazoned on all the shit he definitely built, that was definitely built during his reign, and to think that someone like that would not have, like, inscribed their own presence into something like that, it's kind of weird, right? Whatchamacallit? The size of the ramps they would have had to have built would have been like a bigger task than building the pyramids themselves, you know, like it, I think he said it was like 6 times more massive than the actual pyramid would have had to have been gone into building the ramps. And you can only build them at a certain incline or else you wouldn't be able to drag the bricks up of it. I don't know, man. Like I said, I just think there's way too much strength assigned to the traditional story of how the Herodotus version of events, right? I think that there's way too much faith put into that narrative, and it hasn't earned it, you know? Plus, when you tie that into, like, the narrative he built before that part, about the flood and all this stuff, like, it is, really, really interesting. What do you got? The colors they paint it with? Yeah. Guy that dives deep into the evidence of them using pyramids to produce chemicals? Yeah, that'd be interesting. Here. Yeah, I need more fucking content like that, because it's kind of hit or miss with those types of guys. Let me look at this before we go away from it. While the Red Sea is in chaos, the United States sacrifices everything for Israel. China's Belt and Road is in full swing and the trains are full. The U.S. has spent billions to undermine the Chinese project. Now the Yemenis are rubbing more salt into the U.S.'s wounds. Wow. Wait a minute, so can are Chinese ships going in the Red Sea? That's funny. God damn. I can't wait. That's what I'm saying. I feel like that's what's going to be the fucking death blow, right? Pretty soon there's going to be a generation of European leaders who are going to just fucking make a deal, you know, and start building up some of this. Because this is going to be profitable as fuck. They're not going to be able to resist this, you know. Yeah, Spinks lines up to Leo. Khufu found the Giza pyramids and tried to copy. Yes, I mean, that would be a pretty, you know, I feel like that's a pretty fucking reasonable, you know. It's pretty thorough. Okay, let's look at it. Could have been stronger before. Back then, hard times created strong men, but now we have good times, which creates weak men. Yep. Joe Rogan. Yep. Be a war and Giza gets blown up. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people said that about Iraq, right? Like, that's one of the motivations for the Iraq wars was antiquities somehow. The stuff about Ethiopia was really interesting, right? Like, we have this, like, Western dominant narrative of history that's not necessarily the narrative in other places, right? So, like, you know, the Ethiopian story is different, right? Like, you know, like the books of the Old Testament or whatever, that shit, you know, eventually, like, the story switches to, like, a more historical, like, you know, Greek and Roman driven narrative. But if you look at that, like, it's like, I don't have any reason why we should doubt what Ethiopia says. Yeah, but, like, the, that's where what's her face was, maybe Sheba, one of those famous queens. Who's the queen that Solomon banged? Bathsheba, maybe? So supposedly that sparked a long and pretty strong relationship between the two countries, or the two peoples, you know, and the Israelis, or, you know, whatever you want to call them back then, the Jews, and the Ethiopians, whoever was living there at the time. And they had traveled back and forth there a lot, and their history books, the Ethiopian story of it, you know, the Ethiopian fucking church there, or I don't know if they're Christian churches or they're still Jewish or whatever, but, like, I think they're Christian, right? They continued the narrative after the you know, the Bible version cuts off, and it's like, yeah, they brought the Ark of the Covenant here, and blah blah blah, we've got it. And it was in that Y-Files we watched last week. Like I said, I'm totally fine believing that the fucking humans built the pyramids. Some of the other stuff, I don't know, man. How'd they get it, like, such alignment was so fucking exquisite, right? Like, how'd they do that, right? Like, how'd they get it, like, all the corners and stuff, like the recognition of pi, right? It's like this, the ratio of the slope to the perimeter is like 2 times pi or something, right? Stuff like that, and which, by the way, is also in Teotihuacan. There's another, you know, the pyramid there is 4 times pi, right? Which is just like, you know, supposedly pi was, I mean, it's within less than a degree, you know? It's pretty good. And the, whatchamacallit? Oh, the pi, reference to pi. Supposedly Archimedes was the first guy to develop pi, right? And there's all these ancient structures that have references to it, right? What up, Gritty? I think it had to be with lost civilization with power tools. Or, like I said, I feel like there's some... I want to click on that link you gave. The, yeah, pi is good. I mean, I just think that, like, we are constantly discovering things that completely upends our, you know, our chronology. Like, it's currently ongoing with the Americas, right?